I'm your host, Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center. And for basically now 5 years, I'm going on podcasting as I share with you the experts, individuals that have insights, perspectives, and suggestions as we work on our business, building what I refer to as the premier accounting firm in your area. It's here that we learn the various things that we need to be focused on, such as marketing, selling, pricing, client onboarding, client tech stacks. We're talking about client relations, mental health, just a variety of things that you need to consider as you're working on your business to offer quality accounting services and, most importantly, get paid what you're worth. Now, today we actually have a guest on that I've been looking forward to have for for a number of weeks. It's Tanya Fox. Tanya happens to also be an accountant. She started her first business as an accounting company in 1998. And then Tanya quickly realized that her entrepreneurship and collaboration was deep in her soul and would be a lifelong passion. She has owned service, retail, and franchises, and in doing so, still runs 3 of those businesses today. She spends her days helping business owners with her 5-step framework, learning how to repassion, grow through collaboration, and stop trading minutes for money so that they can go from waiting to break up their business from to falling deeply in love with it again. Now, after seeing too many entrepreneurs struggle, she's decided to write a book to help them grow profits, build relationships, and not feeling alone. It's called How to Collaborate. It's a guide, basically a step-by-step for everyone who is interested in knowing what they should be working on in their business to level up from where they're at. She also can be found on her weekly podcast, Fox Talks Business, that now has over 200 episodes that have been released. So Tanya, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Roger. I'm excited to chat with you again.
Yeah, this is going to be a pleasure simply because, one, you've got that accounting perspective. So I want to begin there. What brought you into accounting, and then what led you to starting your business? So let's start at the beginning.
All right. Well, I'll take you back a little bit to show how kind of it started. When I was about 5 years old, my mom bought me like a little Fisher Price cash register.
Okay.
And I loved it. And that's what I wanted to be. Like my brother wanted to be doctor, lawyer, like all those big things, astronaut. I wanted to be a cashier. Like pushing buttons was like, it just brought me so much joy. Still does in my marriage. I still do push buttons.
There you go.
So as I went through school and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, math and, again, that pushing buttons on a calculator just kind of accumulated to me going, maybe accounting could be the thing that could take all of these loves that I have together, but give me a better wage than just kind of being a cashier. And so I went to university to do that and ended up, getting a job right out of university, working for the government here in Canada. And I lasted about a year and hated it. Just hated it. And it was just too regulated for me. It was really monotonous. Okay. And I wanted to get out there and I really wanted to dig deeper. And so I decided to start my own accounting company and really be able to work with small businesses to get my hands kind of dirty. Because as an accountant, you're usually kind of dealing with at the end, right? The mess has already been done. The shoe boxes are filled, and then you kind of come in and try to make sense of it. And so in kind of working on my own, I discovered there was a lot of pitfalls that were happening in business that was more fun than just doing taxes at the end of the year. And that's where my love for small businesses really started and why I started going and buying more businesses and investing and trying new things.
More. So what's funny is your experience as a young girl with the cash register. My daughter also experienced something similar. She was very, very interested in not only the cash register, but the money and the noise that it would make when she would open and close the drawer. It was one of these things that she just enjoyed. Well, fortunately, she now has her own salon. She's running her own business. So I'd like to think, like you, that she found joy in the cash register, not to become a cashier, but to actually run a business. So I'm going to take that as a good sign. Now, as it relates to accounting, you clearly didn't enjoy it initially, but you did start an accounting business. So what took you to say, okay, even though I'm not enjoying it, this is the business I'd like to begin?
I think it came from, not wanting to work in the corporate world anymore. I had different ideas of if we did this or we can change that. And anybody who's worked in the government know ideas, they're not welcome. This is the way we do it. This is how we've always done it. Just do it this way. And so I really, had kind of looked at a few other people and sort of said, maybe this is what I should do. Maybe starting my own business could be something that I could sort of latch onto. And the accounting, it was just, that's what I had my degree in. That's what I had my experience in. So for me, it made the most sense because I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family. So
Yeah.
I didn't really have anybody to sort of latch onto and sort of say, how do I do this? I kind of just jumped in being young and impulsive and going, like, the worst that could happen, the worst case scenario is I lose everything and I have to go get a job as a cashier and I'm still living a dream.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
either way, let's just go ahead and try it. And so it really was just kind of like, this is kind of what I know how to do. So this is what I'm going to do. And that is still is the accounting company still is one of the businesses I have today because it was my baby and I just can't give it up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm not as in it as what I used to be.
Okay. So with you starting the business, what is maybe a reflection you have as to, wow, this was not expected? Because you say you didn't have that entrepreneurial background, someone to lean on. So what were maybe one or two surprises that you experienced taking that entrepreneurial leap and realizing, okay, this isn't what I thought it would be, but clearly it's something I need to address and work through. So were there any surprises?
I think for me, the biggest one was I had always worked with numbers and I had always worked with the reports at the end, but really digging into the story that those numbers
Mm,
were telling me throughout the year and really learning how to read between the lines of what the numbers were trying to tell me to create a better story. That was really difficult to learn how to do that. You know, when you're dealing with inventory and all of those kinds of other things, it was trying to also, tell that story, but wear all of the hats. So understand how customer service works, understand how burnout works. Cause owning a retail store, I got sick of people really fast. Like, I mean, maybe not to some people, it took me about 5 years, but, like,
uh-huh.
I was losing filters, and there was all of these skills that I was, like, not delving into and realizing that some of the most basic skills I learned were the ones I used the most. So, when I had a paper route and I needed to collect money from people, that skill came in super handy when it was being like, "Hey, you didn't pay your invoice, like, how do I get people to pay?"
Yeah.
But not thinking like I thought, oh, it's going to be everything I learned in university. That's what's going to be what I implement. And I realized that the skills I used the most were nothing that that I spent tens of thousands of dollars on. It was all those soft skills that I learned, working at a hot dog stand, selling ice cream on a bike. Like those were the skills that made me the most money. So in hindsight, I was like, I wish I would have, paid attention to that a little bit, sooner and
Mhm.
developed those kind of customer service skills more because accountants aren't known for being personable.
Shame, shame,
Let's
shame.
be honest.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a few things that I want to draw attention to. First of all, I'm very grateful for your use of the word story. I like the narrative that you're describing there because I do feel that as an accounting profession, we have a unique opportunity to take what the language of a business is, accounting, and really tell a story with what's happening in the organization. And as we go between the lines, we can really find what's working, what's hurting, what's needing attention within the organization, and see how well that story lines up with what the business owners are experiencing. So I liked your choice of words there. The other thing I really enjoyed was how you spoke of your youth helping you in business. I think we too often now today really neglect what it is our youth should be experiencing in those teenage years, working in fast food, customer facing type interactions where they're engaging with the customer in some type of capacity, and learning how to communicate and how to kind of de-escalate things or sell things. All of those skills are invaluable, and yet it's usually learned in those teenage years at traditional high school type jobs. And so I think those are things that you're identifying as ones you learned early on that you were able to repurpose and use in your own career. So those were two really good highlights. The other thing I wanted to ask is, clearly you have your accounting business, still have it today, but you've got that entrepreneurial itch to not just grow your own business, but I don't know what your word you're going to use, but you were drawn to go buy franchises, start other businesses, the retail one, as you mentioned. Why not just go deep in the accounting business? Because a lot of accounting business owners I'm familiar with, they get introduced to opportunities with their clients and they're invited in as shareholders and actually get involved in other ventures outside of accounting. And it's clearly something that you've experienced. So, what drew you to say, okay, I'm going to take my eye off of growing the accounting business and actually work in these other companies?
I think what happened was sort of a happy accident is I grew the company to having staff and doing what you're supposed to do, right? When
Hmm.
you start a company, the idea is that you make it self-sufficient so it can run without you, which
Love it.
was great. I did it and I accomplished that. But the problem is it runs without you. So I found myself kind of a little bit bored.
Love it.
And you know, I love to work. Like the idea of retirement is not a word that's attractive to me. What is attractive to me is being able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. So the other thing that I was discovering is I really wanted to have a hands-on approach to understand what business owners were going through. Because when you're reading that story of numbers between the lines, it doesn't give you the emotion behind it. And that was one of the key pieces I thought that the accounting company was missing for my clients, is
Okay.
that we weren't being able to have the empathy to understand what was going on, because we would say, oh, you're spending like too much on advertising, you should cut that down, you've grown that 200, and they're like, oh, okay, right? But meanwhile, they're sitting in the chair going, and how the hell do you want me to do that? Like, where do you want me to get money? But of course, we're just saying what the numbers are saying. So
Yeah.
there wasn't sort of that piece. And I'd already always been sort of interested in understanding, retail. And I'd wanted, again, back to that cashier thing, I'd wanted a retail store in my personal life. I was a crafter. So I thought I'll just open a craft store and see what it's like to kind of get my hands dirty and sort of build that. So again, it came from like, here's something that I kind of do in the past, something I can dip into. And the one thing that I've always had with business is I still to this day, I'm 47, do not know what I want to be when I grow up. And so I always had that mindset that was a little bit different, I think, than other entrepreneurs of, I'm going to build this business and I'm going to keep it forever. I was like, I'm just going to build it until I'm bored of it and then I'll let it go. Now, I do realize I was fortunate enough to have a business that was kind of running and paying me. So I had a
Hmm.
little bit of a cushion for it. But that's what really just kind of spurred me to go, why not try something else? Like, why do I have to be pigeonholed into just this one thing? To me, I thought that makes me a business owner. What would make me an entrepreneur is reaching out there and trying different things and having different experiences. And I had the smarts of, I'm not going to let this completely tank and go bankrupt because I have the accounting background to go, ooh, this is kind of getting bad if that, and that wasn't the case, but if it was, this is kind of getting bad, I would know when to pull out and kind of go, okay, it's time to let this go. It's just not working.
Well, I love the perspective you're gaining. I mean, obviously, from an accounting perspective, the numbers make sense to you, but to go out there and have these retail experiences and so forth, you're definitely getting a different look on business and some of the stresses that the clients are perhaps experiencing that you wouldn't otherwise know. So, this is, I think, a great
Yeah.
perspective for you to understand. So, I know you're big on collaboration. So, I wanted to transition into that. Collaborations typically does play well in business and it does actually help us in the accounting space. Define for me collaborations as you would like to define it and why it matters.
So for me, just to give a little bit of a background on it, I didn't know that is what I was doing when I first started out. And it was with my first business. I was doing well on paper, but we all know what doing well on paper means, right? The numbers look really, really great, but there really wasn't a ton of cash in the bank. And so there was some things that I needed for the business that I was like, I don't have like hard cash to be able to do this. And so I tried to kind of barter with people and see what could I, right? Like building a deck for like a couple of cases of beer, right? That was my thought process. How can I do this for business?
That's a
And
skill, by the way.
right? Like it's just, and so I needed a sign for the outside. We got our first office and it was like a front space. So we needed like a sign outside. And, I kind of went to a woodworker and went like, can I trade you services? Cause I don't really have like cash for this. And when that worked, I was like, I wonder if I could like keep doing, right? It's that curiosity. Like, I wonder how far I can go. And I always, would think of the story of the guy with a paperclip that ended up with a house, right? Like I
Uh-huh.
was
I
like,
was thinking
how
the exact same thing
small,
as you were saying that.
right? How big can I make this? And so I started kind of playing around with it. And when I sort of delved more into collaboration and sort of worked with it, had some success and had some failures, I discovered that at the heart of it, it's really just two people working together that both, and this is the most important, that both have something to lose. You need both to kind of have skin in the game, because I think that's what gives both teams the drive to make the collaboration successful, right? Because they're like, I don't want to walk away from this and be the bad person. And so when I started working with it, it was myself, but then clients were coming to me and sort of saying, you did this and it was really cool. Like, could you do it for me? And I was like, I have no idea. Like, let's try it and see if it works. And so I started doing it for other people, which again happens a lot in business, right? People see you do something and they're like, can you show me how to do that? And so it just kind of snowballed. And I realized that that's what I was starting to spend most of my time on, was helping other businesses to work together, to collaborate. I was seeing it, around town, more people were doing it. I was seeing
Mhm.
opportunities, and I was just like reaching out during my, big networking days of going, why don't you work with you? And, I was kind of trying to be that connector person. And I realized people would pay me for just having ideas. I thought, that's really dumb, but I'll take your money. But at the time, not realizing, because for me, it was so easy for people to go, what about this business and then the business? How could they work together? And I could spit out 7, 8, 9 ideas. And to me, I was like, why would people pay for this? It's so easy to do. And that was like the other biggest lesson in business, that I realized my superpower is the thing that is the easiest for me to do. And I didn't realize that. I thought it was something that I had to work on for years and cultivate and strive for. And I realized this party trick is really my zone of genius. And I thought, wow, like, how often do we think it needs to be something more complicated? And so for me, it was really just trying the waters and trial by fire, and just going, how can I work with somebody else? What can I give them that's going to be beneficial? What can I take from them that's going to be beneficial to me? And then going, how can we make this bigger and bigger? How can we turn this paperclip into a house for us,
Yeah.
and grow together? Because entrepreneurship is lonely. So the other thing collaboration did is not make me feel like I had to go through all of the struggles by myself. Because that's really when I was collaborating, when I was like, I need this. I don't know how to get it. There was that frustration piece. And then I was like, how can I find somebody who can do this for me or help me?
Yeah. So, with regards to your out of the box thinking, you're clearly not just seeing things in a cookie cutter approach. You're willing to go outside, think of things new, try things new. So, I'm curious, do you have any like key ideas that make collaboration work? Is there anything essential to making it effective? You were talking about skin in the game earlier, that both parties need to have something involved in the collaboration to make it work. So, anything else that you would add?
I would say, like, so two things is not to be scared to go to somebody with an idea that you have. So what often, as I say, is like, build a relationship. So if you're looking at another business and you're like, I really want to work with them. It all starts with just building a relationship, saying hi to them, walking
Mhm.
in, to their business, asking them questions, even if it's online, about them. Don't go in, with that proverbial raincoat where you're just ripping it open and like, hi, we've never met before, but do you want to buy a watch? Right? It's kind of creepy. So it's really like, build a relationship so that
Uh-huh.
they know you're not trying to compete with them, and being open. I always say to all of my clients, usually you'll go to somebody and go, I have this great idea. You've envisioned it all, especially if you're a woman, because we tend to go from, like, we've done the whole romance, like the whole relationship is built in our head.
Yeah.
But you might go to them and they're like, I don't really want to give you that. Or that's not really what I want to do. So it's being open to kind of, asking them, what do you think about this? Like, do you have any ideas? Because I always say, if you can get somebody to go, what if we, like, if you can get those words said, that's it. Like, I always say, you're in, you can do a collaboration. Cause now they're putting some skin in the game. They're
Yeah.
they're thinking, they're like, what if we did something like this? Or what if we change this or tweak that? So it's really, building a relationship, staying open, and making sure that you're getting them invested in the idea, and then just following through with it, checking in and making sure, like, how are we doing? How are we feeling? Even if it fails. And I mean, still to this day, I have some that don't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like it's a brilliant idea, but it's not about just walking away and going, oh, that didn't work. It was a failure. Okay, now we assess, we reharness, and that checking in helps with that. So you don't get to the end of the project and go, that didn't work. You can kind of go in the middle and go, this isn't working. How can we fix this?
Yeah.
And then that for me, that's what's led to bigger collaborations, because we're like, oh, we're missing this key social aspect to it. So let's bring another person on board and make this a bigger collaboration. Let's find somebody who has that skill, kind of thing.
Well, having had numerous collaborations over the years, I can definitely attest that there are right ways to do them and wrong ways to do them. Definitely the skin in the game is very, very appropriate.
Mhm.
There's got to be a reason for them to participate as much as we do. And so there can't also be just a single winner. It's got to be
Yeah.
working towards something that benefits both individuals. But yeah, skin in the game and both obvious wins. Those are two big takeaways for me. And I've unfortunately had collaborations that just didn't work, but it was worth the try. And I learned from those experiences. And I think over the years, it's gotten better and better and better. Now, I want to go from here, though, into your 5-step framework and share with our audience a little bit of what that consists of. You've got these 5 steps. Tell us what each of them are in a summary of those.
So when I'm, sitting down with a client, usually most of the people I'll see have been in business, over 3 years, and I've kind of like lost that spark, right?
Mhm.
New entrepreneurs get into business and then they're kind of like that this is what it is. Like this is it. And it's the hardest thing in business, even for myself, which is why I have a coach also, is to look at your own business subjectively. So the first step is to really have somebody who can help you step outside of your business and look at it for exactly what it is, which is usually the numbers, because numbers don't wear costumes, right? They're just like, this is how shitty it is. I don't know what to tell you. It's red. I don't know what to tell you. So the first step that I usually do is really step back from your business. Ask if you have somebody who's, doing your bookkeeping and stuff for you,
Yep.
ask them to print you reports that will show you how it's been going over the years. What are the differences? Because a lot of times what happens, especially in the accounting field, is clients are too scared to say, I don't know. Or what you're saying doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand what you're talking about. They don't want to say that because they're a business owner. They're supposed to know. So you really have to be okay with going, I have no idea what you're talking about. This doesn't make sense to me at all.
Yeah.
Please explain it to me. Right. And also, if you're on the other side of it and you're the accountant, if you see that glazed over look, it's time to kind of explain a little bit more, because they're not going to admit that they don't understand. So
Correct.
we really sort of tear down those numbers. And again, look at the story. What are your numbers trying to tell you? That's the first step. The second step is going, what do you want? What do you truly want? And this is a really hard one for people. And they always go, shouldn't we do that at the end? But the truth is that success is subjective, and people forget that, especially these days with social media. Everybody's talking about you've got to have a 7-figure, 8-figure business. Like that's the goal. But what do you truly want? Do you only want to work 3 days? Do you just want to have your bills paid and that's it, and live a comfortable living? Do you want to work tons of hours? Really sitting down and getting to the heart of, what does success truly look like for you? What will you be happy with? And we usually do two. What will you be happy with right now? What is going to make you survive? And then from there, what would you like to jump to? When we have that, we can move on to the third step of going, can we make this work? So this is where we start to rebuild. This is where we start to reignite. Is what you have right now something that you can work with? Or is it time to close the door and try something else? Because
Wow.
sometimes a lot of people get stuck in businesses and then they have to stay because people go, but you started this, you can't walk away. And so sometimes people just need permission to go, it's okay to walk away. You can do something else. And like you were saying before, sometimes it's just a twist. It's, wanting to be a cashier to turning into a hair salon. The skills are always transferable. Working, selling ice cream on a bike can be transferable to franchise ownership. So it's just kind of getting that permission and going, okay, how can we make this picture fit the idea of success that you want? And then the last step is how do we make this work? This is the most important one. So what do we need to put in place to make sure that you're going to continue to do this? What accountability do you need? What people do you need? When do those people need to come in? Because that's the hardest time, right? A lot of people go, oh, like hire a VA. What kind? What type? What do you need help with? Is it right now or is it later? So it's really creating that step-by-step program or that step-by-step sort of roadmap plan to go, this is what I need to strive for to hit all of these goals. And this is when I want to do it in. Because I have some clients who are like, I want to do this in 5 years. So it's a slower plan because they're like, I've got family, I've got young kids. Then I have some people who are like, let's go 6 months. I want this done. So being realistic too with how long do you want to wait until this goal is achieved?
Yeah.
Because it's so like these days, everybody wants everything to happen instantaneously and it just doesn't. So you have to decide, do you want somebody who's going to be like, it ain't going to happen in that short of time, but good luck to you. Right.
That is so right. And I like the fact that you've got this 5-step process because, like you, we've got a 5-step process. It's engage and manifest, understand accounting, just kind of like you began,
Yeah.
increase revenue, improve profits, and build value. And as we focus on those, we go through a similar journey as to what you're describing, which is the business owner gets to set the cadence in which you're going to do this. Is this something that's going to be done in 6 months or in 3 years? All of these things become relevant to them because it's their company. It's what they
Right.
need and what they want. But now having these 5 steps, I'm curious, what led you to then write a book? You got to a point where writing a book was obviously something that you intended to do. You wrote How to Collaborate. I'm curious. I've written a number of books myself. What gets you to the point to realize I've got something in my mind? It seems to be working. I think it can resonate with others. I've got a story here or something to tell. I'm going to put it to paper. What was that process? Why did you write the book?
Well, first off, the book that I thought I was going to write was going to be a fiction book.
Interesting.
All growing up, I never thought I would write a business book. But what
Okay.
ended up happening is I started speaking a lot at conferences, and in doing that and getting new clients and really sort of interviewing the clients that I had with the accounting company and going like, what do you like? What are you missing? Like I was really diving into the emotional side of their business and what they were going through. The one thing I kept hearing over and over and over again was a frustration of going, everything that's out there is about 6 figures. How I got to 6 figures, like how I made it rich, how I like sold my business to Microsoft for millions of dollars. Like what the hell? What about when you're at 3 figures or 4 figures? Like nobody talks about that. But like that's where I am. And so I kept hearing this sort of narrative happening. And then I started like looking myself going like, how did I do it? Because we all start at that point, right? We all start where, you're like, woohoo, $5,000 month, like
Uh-huh.
this is fantastic. But it's almost like that becomes shameful for a lot of people that they don't want to admit that. And so they're not celebrating it. And they feel like they can't celebrate until they're making millions, or 10 or $20,000 months. And so I was realizing that there is this real gap that was happening, that the books that were out there were saying spend all of this money, right? Spend $50,000 to make 10,000. And I was like, the math ain't mathin' in these books of how this is sort of working.
Uh-huh.
And so when I sat down, I thought, I want to write this book, but I want to write this book so that somebody can buy it and go out and start, even if they've never made a dollar in their business, because that's who truly needs help. And so when I was going like around to publishers, a lot of them are like, no, 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 like we want to talk about the big collaborations that you've done, like the multi-million dollar ones or with the big companies. And I was like, but who cares? Because I promise you,
Yeah.
nobody who's doing those, like they're paying me to do it. They're not reading my book and doing it. I want to help the people who aren't at that point yet. And so I sat down and I finally found a publisher who was like, yeah, we like that. We love that idea. So I said, be clear, I'm only going to talk about things like you can essentially do for free. I want people to spend like $25 on this book and have everything.
Yeah.
And so that's really where it came for me. So when I sat down and I wrote it, that was who I had in mind because I was there and I remember that frustration and that feeling. And I realized it's still there among people. It hasn't ever gone away. And that was my passion, was to give them something that they could feel like, I can do this. And now I can get to that point. I can get to that point. I can celebrate the smaller numbers because I get to choose what my success is. So that's kind of how the book came to be. And then, yeah. And then it was just like trial and error of handing to people and going, hey, go and read this and tell me if it works for you. So it turned into something that I thought I was never going to write, turned into something that became sort of a passion project of mine.
Yeah.
And then I realized that's who I truly want to help. I want to help the people where I was when I kind of got to that point in my business where I was like, I'm stuck. Like there's just that plateau that you hit and you're like, I don't know how to get off this hill.
Well,
I
what
want to climb.
Well, one of the things I've experienced writing a book is, first of all, it all makes sense in my mind, but writing it down, it became more difficult to explain things in a way that someone else could just pick it up, read it, and understand. So that was a challenge. But one of the things that's fascinating to me is how long it took to write the book. I don't know what you experienced, but it took far longer to write the
Yeah.
book and get it down in print to where I was happy with it than I expected. I thought it'd be, just a few weeks, maybe a few months, we'd be done with this. It took me over a year to go through this process. And so with my most recent book. So I'm curious, did it take you longer as well to write the book?
It was about 2 years,
Yep.
the whole process from, like, first pen to paper, like, to being published,
Yeah.
and I spent a lot of time like, where I live and where my office is in is kind of like a little cul-de-sac of a street,
Okay.
and everybody still to this day goes, "Oh, I saw you writing your book," because I would walk and talk it into my phone of,
Oh,
like, what
okay.
my idea was, right? Because I could talk faster than I could type.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, I spend a lot of times just, like, walking in a circle kind of doing it, but it was a lot of, like, Post-it notes, like, stuck to the wall like you see in movies of going, "Does this make sense? Did I do this in the right order?" Like, there was
Yeah.
a lot of questioning, and I went away to, a writer's retreat, and, one of the authors, she had written, like, 25 books or whatever. She just said, "Just publish it. It's your first book, just publish it." And I was like, "No, but it's gotta be perfect, and I gotta trial and error." And she goes, "No, just publish it." She was like, "There'll be errors, there'll be mistakes, people
Mhm.
will find them, you'll be able to talk about them." But she's like, "Stop worrying about it so much." Because she says, "Whenever I've done multiple edits, that's when I water down the content too much." So, she's like, "If you want it to be a conversation, make it sound like a conversation, make it sound like you." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm not too sure." I questioned it a little bit, but at
Yeah.
the end I realized, yeah, that's just what I need to do because I can always write a second one and then go, "Oh, that was just the first one." Like it was
Very
I was
true.
I got too stuck in my head, right? Of going
Yeah.
like, "What are people gonna think about this?" But I realized I just need to be passionate about it and just put my heart into it, and then it'll reach the right people.
Yeah. Well, in today's world, everyone has an opinion. So that's first of all where you
Exactly.
need to start. And the second thing is it's inevitable. Whenever you publish the book, there's always going to be something that you've done. It's something spelt wrong. It's something grammatically incorrect. I mean, it's interesting. Every book has it. I do
Yeah.
have fewer ones now, but nonetheless, they still happen.
Yeah.
Uh, so the next thing is, I know that you speak of something that I don't believe my audience would be familiar with, and it's called anger journaling. Tell us what that is and why it's important for
Oh.
you as you're working with employees.
So that's a fun story how that started. So I got into this phase, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs can relate with, where I started being like a conference hog. Like I started going to like every conference and every self-help thing and
Yeah.
sitting at the last one. I think I had been to 10 in 1 year. And they were like, okay, what I want you to do now is I want you to sit down. I want you to write 100 things that make you happy. And I was like, if one more person tells me to write shit that I'm happy about, like I'm going to choke somebody, right? Because it wasn't helping me solve what was going on, right? We were
Yeah.
having a lot of there was a lot of frustration with the employees and there seemed to kind of be like bickering going on and I couldn't figure out what was happening with my team. And so I thought, what if I do as often in my life, what if I do the exact opposite of what everybody is telling me to do? And so what I started doing for it started off just me trying it is every time I would get like frustrated or I'd get like frustrated is the easiest word, but truthfully,
Okay.
it was every time somebody pissed me off, I grabbed a notebook and I would write down, here's what the date, here's kind of like a brief thing of what happened. This is why it ticked me off. I did it for 2 weeks. And then I stopped and I looked back and tried to see, is there a trend that keeps happening? And what I found for myself was around 2:30 p.m., I got irritated almost every day. Like there was
Okay.
something minor that was irking me. And I thought, what if I block that time off in my calendar? Because that's obviously not a time for me to talk with people or do interviews or whatever the case may be. So maybe it's not just, that I need to eat a Snickers or something. Maybe that's just not a good time of day for me. And so I started blocking it off. And then the rest of the week started getting better. And I was finding myself not getting as frustrated with other things. And so I thought, okay, there's something to this. So I got the whole team together and I was like, let's all do this anger journaling. Every time we're upset, let's write it down. And if you're willing to share, it's going to be private unless you're willing to share it.
Uh-huh.
Let's see what's happening. And so we did it. We did the assessment. And what I found is when I looked sort of just very nonchalantly at it, is that I had some team members that were really good at something, but it wasn't giving them passion. But then we switched it and I started going like, what projects do you really like to work on? So as an example, we had one girl that was doing our social media,
Okay.
which was fine and great and everything, but that's not what she really liked. She loved talking with the clients and the customers when they came in. That's what brought her the most joy. So I was like, well, do you want to switch? So, and then it just worked out that the person who was on reception at the time really wanted to do social media. So I was like, why don't you two switch for a week and see what's going on? And so by delving into where the frustration or where the anger was coming from in the teams, we were able to go, this is such a simple fix. They're just doing something that doesn't make them passionate. So let's move them to something else. And what also it did too, is it brought us all closer together because sometimes we would laugh, like she would be like, on Tuesday, like one of the guys was like, on Tuesday, somebody ate my piece of cake. Really, so we would have some funny things that we were all getting connected together, but it was helping us to collaborate and understand what these little idiosyncrasies everybody sort of in the office had. So we were helping, right? Like nobody was eating anybody else's cake anymore. Somebody said, I feel like I'm always just picked on as stuff that I do wrong. So it allowed me as a leader to go, okay, we need to make sure that as many times as we're like, hey, you kind of messed this line up, we also need to go, oh my God, like we're going to create a board of like things people did that were amazing. And so it opened our eyes to realizing the positivity that we needed to start creating. And so it was really beneficial to kind of go the opposite way and go, let's look at this. Now, we didn't stay stuck in it. We don't do it every single day because that would just leave us stuck in the anger. But for
Yeah.
a short term, it really helped to go, what is going on? And sometimes it was silly and sometimes it was stuff that, needed more. We lost a team member over it because we realized they just weren't a fit and they were causing a lot of strife among everybody else, but nobody was saying anything. So it just, I think, really gives you an opportunity to sort of sit down with your team and assess what's going on, or even with yourself personally as a
Yeah.
leader to go, is it one person? Is it one situation? Is it one client that's causing it? We also fired a client once because we do this, once or twice a year, and
Uh-huh.
realizing this client wasn't a fit anymore because they stressed everybody out. So I was like, it's just not worth it at the end of the day. We're going to let them go.
Very good. Well, one of the things I'm drawing from this is you clearly spoke of having the right people in the right positions. That's kind of back to the old analogy of, do you have the right people on the bus and are they in the right seats? Then
Right.
the other thing that I thought you were really good at is, as you're journaling, even though it was kind of anger related, as you go through that process, I think you actually can self-identify things that are your answers. It's that epiphany
Yeah.
that comes just because of the exercise that you're going through, just because you're now removing yourself from the situation and you're having to articulate it, explain it. And I've experienced that with my own business coaches. As I'm struggling with something, if I can verbally talk through what it is I'm going through, just that process of trying to explain myself helps me get clearer on my thoughts. And at the same time, I'm oftentimes finding my own solutions. And I just did this literally yesterday. I talked through a number of challenges that I'm facing right now in the business. And as I was talking it through, I could see either I was making a mountain out of a molehill. This was clearly not as big as I'm making it sound. And there's maybe a solution in here, but it was just the act of talking it through that was so very helpful. So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of good little things in there.
And it's a good skill. Like if anybody watches, the Ted Lasso show or whatever, we always joke now that we always go, should that make it to the journal is sort of our
Mhm.
Oklahoma, that if somebody's really upset, we go like, they'll come into my office and say, this is what's going on. I'll be like, should this make it to the journal? And it takes us all back to go, am I making a mountain out of a molehill?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
sometimes the answer is, nah, you're right. Like, I just need a Snickers. And sometimes the answer is, yeah, it really does. I'm really, really upset about this. And then we know how to sort of judge it as well. Because sometimes you do just need to let off steam.
Yep.
And then you find your answer.
Yep. Very, very true. So how do you view success? What's success to you?
You know, I love this question because it changes so often. So, if I may, I'll just give a little short. When I first started
Yeah.
my business, success was making millions. That's really what it was.
Okay.
And once I hit that goal, I realized that when I was there, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work and it was a lot of time. So when I sort of restructured business, I thought, can I change my view of success? And I was starting a family at that time. And so time became success. How much
Yeah.
time can I have available to watch my son grow up? And so that became success to me. And now my son just graduated last month from high school
Wow.
and doesn't care that I exist. So now I'm back into like, okay, like now I want to grow. Now I want to be able to take summers off. I only want to work 3 days a week. So for me, success is just really sitting down and go, like, what do I want to do? For me, it really comes down to how do I want to spend my life when I'm not sitting at my desk? And when I am sitting at my desk, what fuels me? Because there will always be those moments where you have to do stuff like filing or customer service or
Yeah.
collections or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. But I always make sure now that I look at it and go, how often do I want to do that? And how can I make that happen? So right now, for me, success is helping as many business owners as I can not feel like 5 figures isn't enough. I want to find those people and I want to go with pom poms and streamers and balloons and be like, if it's enough for you, it's enough. Because I think we need to do that more, especially when we're higher up in business. I think we
Yeah.
need to remind people that everybody starts somewhere and you have to celebrate. Because if you're not celebrating now, you're going to forget to do it later. And then what did you do it all for?
Well, that's one of the things I'm guilty of. I'm very slow to celebrate, and honestly, it's something that I struggle with because I'm on to the next thing. It's kind of hard to pause and say, "Oh, okay, we did do this well. Let's celebrate it." Well, I'm usually finding that out a week or so or a month later. And it's like, "Oh, that was a great month." Well, we're in the middle of this one. Let's keep going. So celebrating is a big thing. So I calendar it. I did make it intentional. It's deliberate. It's something that I purposely try to put into my life simply because there's a lot to celebrate. There's so much to be grateful for, but I sometimes just get caught up in so many of the various things I'm involved in. So I'm intentionally stepping back and being able to celebrate things with friends, family, coworkers. And yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That's really good. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to break this up, Tanya, because we've had a wonderful conversation and I'm going to kind of wrap things up as I go over my summary of what I felt the highlights were of our conversation. But before we do that, I want to invite the episode listeners to actually go to the episode description. And there you can find a copy of Tanya's book. She's actually providing a place where you can go grab a copy of her book, How to Collaborate. In the episode description, you'll find the information you're needing to do so. And in doing that, find some turnkey things that you can easily implement to find the collaborations that are beneficial in your business that could help propel you in your company. So that's one of the things I want you to take advantage of there. The other is a book that is called Your Profit and Growth Expert. It's in the book, Your Profit and Growth Expert, that we talk about various principles as it relates to business and things that you can be working on to, in fact, build the premier accounting firm. It's there that you'll find the 5 things that you can be doing not only within your own organization, but also with your clients to best serve them and become for them their profit and growth expert. So check out the book. You're definitely going to want a copy of that. It's a free copy, so get it now. Now, as for a summary, there are so many things that we talked about that I really wanted to identify. The first of which was her story. Coming into entrepreneurship is clearly a challenge for a lot of people. It's something that they don't expect. And she didn't have that experience of being an entrepreneur before until she could clearly reflect back to when she was in her youth, not only just playing with the cash register, but more importantly, being a teenager and selling the ice cream from the bike and so forth. It's there that she acquired a number of the skills that she was later able to use. And I'm happy that she was able to identify the source of those, because I'm very much a proponent of getting those types of jobs in those teenage years. I think it's phenomenal and it's foundational. The other thing that was very helpful is she spoke of thinking outside of the box, those collaborative opportunities, finding places with other businesses and so forth that we can work together and work towards a common goal. But the two things that were essential to make that work is there needed to be skin in the game from both parties and a clear win for each individual. Those things were, I think, essential in the experiences I've had as it relates to collaboration, and something that I would definitely take as a takeaway from all of this. She also shared her 5 steps as it relates to business success, starting first of all with the numbers and then getting into the why. I thought all those were very helpful because I could relate to each of those steps. So I appreciated her sharing them. And then this whole process of writing a book, I have experienced it. Taking 2 years to write her book was obviously something that she did. I loved how she communicated that she did it verbally, walking around in a circle, just kind of saying what she needed to say because she could say it faster than she could write it. I think that's a healthy exercise. And at the end, not just becoming so fixated on perfection, but as the publisher suggested, just getting it to print, getting it out there and sharing that message so that we can actually help one another. I think it's wonderful that as business owners, we get to that point where we feel that we're in that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that pinnacle where we're able to now give back and share what we've learned over these years with the experiences we've had. The other thing that I thought was also very helpful is her definition of success, that it evolves and changes. I agree with Tanya. The thing that I wanted 5-10 years ago isn't clearly the same thing now. You go through those stages of perhaps time, perhaps money, perhaps fame. It's just one of those things that you're going to work through, and it does change and evolve. Life changes and there's seasons in there, and we just need to recognize that it's okay that we actually change our focus and work towards something that's more purposeful now. The other thing I'd want to end on is the fact that she did share this idea of anger journaling. I think there's health in just stepping outside of the situation, talking it through, writing it down, trying to get a different perspective on that. She mentioned that she worked with a business coach. I think all those things are essential so that we can, as business owners, kind of step outside of the company and work on it. It's both ourselves that we're working on and our companies. So all those things are clearly important. I appreciate her sharing those with us. So Tanya, I'm going to ask you now, do you have a closing thought that you'd like to leave with our audience?
I think the question that I get asked probably the most is, how creative do I need to be to think outside of the box? Because
Mm,
that's something I talk on a lot. And I just want to let everybody know, you already do it. You already have this skill. If you don't believe me, simply walk around your office or your home and look for things that you are already using, not for their intended purposes.
mm,
So the easiest example is, do you use a glass or a mug as a pen cup? That's thinking outside of the box.
yeah.
It is a muscle that you can build. It's not a skill that you need to be born with. So just keep remembering that and just keep thinking new things up.
That's a healthy thing to learn as an entrepreneur. I like that. Well, I love this. Tanya, it was great having you here on the show. For my listeners, if you haven't already subscribed, I invite you to subscribe to the podcast. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. And more importantly, set your reminders so you can follow us and get notified each and every week when we have a new episode released. With regards to the podcast, we also have areas that you can go to listen to playlists that we've compiled of various topics that you might find relevant to your current situation. So I invite you to go to universalaccounting.com, and there in the navigation, find the podcast highlights. The podcast highlights basically have playlists we've put together related to marketing, selling, staffing issues, tech stacks, basically a variety of topics that you can dive deep into, hearing from the experts as they relate to your business today. The other thing I would like to do is invite you to GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference you do not want to miss. This is a conference for business owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. It's here from the stage. We hear from the experts on things that we can be doing today to work on our business. Also, at the same time, you're meeting with your peers, individuals that you can collaborate with. Find those different things that you can do to better assist your clients, and also perhaps find different opportunities. In addition, you can be inspired by them, seeing those who are doing so much more than you have, and also at the same time being an example or mentor to those that are striving to do what you've already achieved. Lastly, you can also meet the staff here at Universal Accounting, those individuals that are committed to your success so you can be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal Accounting. The other thing I'd like to point out as it relates to the podcast is if you would like to find out more about these principles, these things that we've discussed each and every week, feel free to reach out to us. You can go to our website at universalaccountingschool.com. There you can find a variety of things that you can be doing to work on your business, as well as train your staff. Additionally, you can give us a phone call. You can reach us at 801-265 3777. So do take care, be safe out there, and always remember this: if it's about accounting, it is universal. Tanya, that was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a lot
That
of
was
fun.
fun.
Yeah, and it went fast. It always does.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the next thing in the chat is that
Okay.
text. I'm going to have you
Yes.
go ahead now and just say that little piece there that we're going to use as a promo.
Okay, perfect. Let me get some water. Hang on. All right. This is Tanya Fox, and it was an absolute pleasure to record with Roger an episode of Building the Premier Accounting Firm. We discussed so many things about collaboration, anger journaling, and how to think outside of the box. So I hope you have as much fun as I did on the episode, and I invite you to listen, join, and don't forget to subscribe so you can hear all of his amazing episodes.
Tanya, you're awesome. That was perfect. Thank you.